what's up everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. And yeah, today as you can see I have two actually pretty old cars already by now, the 5600XT and the 5500XT from AMD here in my lap. And today we're gonna be checking them out in some live benchmarking in 4K resolution. So they're like a year old already, but I did receive those cards just about now. So thought maybe to do some 4K benchmarking, although these cards are meant for like 1080p and 1440p, right? But what if you still want to use these cards at 4K? How well do they perform in something like Call of Duty Warzone, right? So that's what we're gonna be checking out in today's video. And if you wanna buy these cards, I'm gonna leave my Amazon affiliate link down below in the description. So first of all, a little bit about the price, right? The ROG version of the 5500XT costs around about 260 euros here in Estonia, in East Europe. And the TUF 5600XT costs around 370 euros even. The cheapest ones for these cards I found were 170 euros for the 5500XT and 280 for the 5600XT. So is it worth to pay so much more for the ROG and TUF series cards? And is it worth to get these cards at all, right? Well, first of all, as you can see, the heatsinks on both of these cards are pretty massive in size, meaning you'll get a pretty nice cooling solution with the premium price. The ROG 5500XT has axial deck fans that do not spin at all when the temperature has not reached 60 degrees Celsius. So most of the time this card will save its fan lifespan and not spin at all, making it pretty much a passively cooled card, right? Specifically if you have a decent airflow going on in your case. Now the TUF 5600XT on the other hand is looking a bit different, right? But still uses the same fans, meaning they do not spin at all when the card's temperature has not reached 60 degrees Celsius, which is pretty neat. Overall, both cards are very well made, although the ROG card is the only one using premium parts to further enhance the stability and lifespan of the card. Both have nice backplates as well, which is nice, and those who love RGB will be satisfied by a teeny tiny bit by a small stripe on the TUF series and the ROG logo which glows in RGB on the ROG series card. I guess it's something, right? And lastly, both of these cards are using one single 8-pin connector to draw power, and both of these cards have 3 DisplayPorts and 1 HDMI. So, yeah, let's check out how these cards perform in some of my benchmarking, which we're gonna run through live here. Should be pretty interesting and nice. Yeah, I'm gonna be running them through in 4K, as my monitor is 4K. And these are pretty well old cards by now, right? So I wanted to do something differently, right? Otherwise I would have ran these tests through in 1080p or 1440 or both. Pretty time consuming if we're gonna do live testing, but yeah, that was my thought, right? My benchmarking PC is going to be a proper i7 10700K, 3.8 GHz boosting up to 5.1 at 8 core 16 threads, so should be a pretty banging CPU for these cards. So yeah, let's check it out, how they perform, what the temperature is in idle and in full load, and yeah, hopefully you'll learn something and understand if these cards are meant for you or not. Alright, so welcome to the benchmarking section here, and we begin things off with the RX5500XT. And before we begin our testing, let's just check out what the temperatures are doing, and then we're gonna come back here and see what they did after we've run all those benchmarks through, and also then we can compare it to the 5600XT. But anyway, yeah, as you can see, the GPU temperature in idle here hovers around 55 to 58 degrees Celsius. The fans are not spinning at all at the moment, so totally passively cooled video card. The case ventilation system is not the best at the moment because I don't have my window on here. But yeah, these are the temperatures for the 5500 XT. Alright, so now I have the RX5600 XT here, and as you can see, the temperatures in idle most of the time are like 50 to 53 degrees, going up to 56, 58 degrees maybe even when recording, because I am recording my desktop at the moment here, to give you a little bit better idea what's going on the screen, because you can't really see it through the camera. But yeah, pretty similar temperatures here. Anyway, let's head into the first benchmark and see, how it holds up. Alright, so let's kick things off with Assassin's Creed Odyssey's benchmark here, and today I'll be running both of the cards at 4K resolution, which is gonna be pretty interesting, I hope, because these cards are meant for 1080p and 1440p gaming, but there's so many benchmarks out there already with these cards at those resolutions, so why not, as I have a proper 144Hz 4K screen here. And yeah, I am using AMD's 27.20.12.029.1000 driver. Good job, AMD. Freaking good job. Those are the drivers I'm using for the 5500 XT here, and all of the graphical settings I'm gonna be using at the most maximum detail possible. So should be interesting without any aliasing. And that's the same settings I'm gonna be using for both of these cards. Anyway, let's run benchmark and see how it fares. Alright, so 28 frames per second here. I have a counter there from MSI's Afterburner, but I couldn't make the frame rate counter bigger. But yeah, 21, 17, 18, well, yeah, it's not really playable at 4K, right? Maximum detail. But still, 20 frames per second for... How much was this card? It's like 200 and... no. It's around 200 euros, right? 180 to 200 euros. But if I'm not mistaken, the GTX 1660 Ti should be even faster and cheaper. GTX 1660 Ti Super, which is like 150 euros. So that's kind of interesting, but I don't have the card at the moment in hand to compare. But I've seen some benchmarking out there versus the 5500 XT. But today we're gonna be comparing this 5500 XT to the 5600 XT, which is like 320 euros. But yeah, 21 frames per second. I mean, yeah, it's not meant for 4K gaming, right? Definitely run it at 1080p at like medium settings, and I'm sure you're gonna be hitting like 40 frames per second or something like that. But yeah, 4K. Alright, 21. Anyway, let's pop in the 5600 XT, which should be the equivalent to the RTX 2060, and see how that fares. Alright, so 34 frames per second in the beginning here, 30, 31, hovering 30. It's almost exactly the same as the 5500 XT, dropping to 18 frames per second, 19, 18 frames per second at the moment here. Do I have the right card in the computer at the moment? What? Isn't this supposed to be like a lot faster? Okay, definitely wasn't expecting this. But it is the 5600 XT. That's strange. Perhaps it's to do with the optimization that Assassin's Creed Odyssey, how Odyssey has been, built up. Not the best optimization, right? But yeah, 16. Can the 5500 XT get a better performance here? It can't, right? It's not possible. 20. How is this possible? 20 frames per second. For the 5600 XT. What? Okay, that's a bit of a shocker. Hopefully this is a one-off. Hopefully just in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. But we're gonna move into Call of Duty Warzone and later on into Grand Theft Auto 5 and check out there. But yeah, exactly the same, or 1 frame per second lower performance than the 5500 XT. At least in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, everything turned up to the maximum detail at 4K. Okay, interesting. Anyway, let's move on to the next benchmark. So let's continue things with Call of Duty Warzone, one of the most popular games out there at the moment, I guess. And yeah, I have my MSI's Afterburner frame rate counter on the top left corner there. I don't know how well you can see there. At the moment it shows 30 frames per second. It's gonna be interesting to play around here. But in the options settings, right, in the graphical settings, I've cranked up everything to the most maximum detail. And again, at 4K resolution, right? So should be pretty interesting. Anti-aliasing is going to be disabled for both cards, right? But these are the exact settings I'm going to be using for both of 5500 XT and for the 5600 XT. So let's do a solo run here and check out how the frame rate holds up. All right, 46, 47, 50 frames per second. Well, that's a lot more than I was expecting. 35 frames per second at the moment here. Quickly, let's check out what the frame rate does in the plane here inside. This is the lowest frame rate that we're gonna be seeing, I guess. Dip to 15, but solidly 18 frames per second here. it's definitely not playable, but 30 plus is playable, right? I mean, not enjoyable, but playable. So let's see, the two buildings where I record my frame rate are there. It's 37 frames per second here. Let's hit record, drops to 34, so we lose a few frames per second here while recording. But yeah, I mean, definitely, I guess playable at 4K when you take, you know, take some graphical settings down to medium or something like that, right? And for the 5500 XT. Anyway, I'm gonna head on to those, onto that building there, onto the rooftop, and gonna see what the exact frame rate for my test here is gonna be, and then let's compare to the 5600 XT as well. Okay, got to my first position here, and as you can see, it's 41 frames per second. Let's stop recording for a second, and yeah, 44 frames per second at the moment here. So let's run to the other side here as well, and still 44, and here for a second, and 41 frames per second. So I'd say, I mean, yeah, the best scenario, the best case scenario is gonna be like 40 frames per second, but I'd say, you know, don't expect more than 35 frames per second average, I guess. It is hovering over 35 constantly, but yeah, this is how it performs on the 5500 XT. So let's pop the 5600 XT in and see how that goes. Alright, so 60 frames per second at the very beginning here, dropping down to 50 with the 5600 XT now. Much better, well, not much, but better. So here I think it dropped to 15 before, 17, 18, 20, 21, 25. It was like 18 average, so it's 22 now. It's better, but is it better by 150 euros? 39, 35, 40 frames per second here. Let's hit record. 33, 34 frames per second. About this, I think it's like the same frame rate, right? That's odd. It was a little bit better earlier, but it was a different place as well, right? So that's why I'm using always this rooftop here to get the exact same frame rate pretty much all the time, right? The same exact spot, right? And we have 40 to 47, right? 47 frames per second. Yep, locked at 47. And let's hit here as well. 45, and now here, and we have 40 frames per second. So let's hit record, drops down to 38, so we lose a few frames, 37 even. But yeah, I'd say a little bit better. It's like 5 frames per second better result at 4K at maximum detail. Perhaps you can get a little bit better difference when, you know, turning down some settings to medium. Definitely better results at 1080p or 1440p, right? But for 4K, not that much of difference between these cards. And this one here does cost like €100 more, or maybe even 150, right? Yeah. God damn it. Oh, okay. Yep. I don't have any weapons. Oh shit. Anyway, yeah, let's move into Grand Theft Auto 5 as well. But yeah, pretty interesting that at 4K there's not a lot of difference between these cards. Anyway, yeah, let's head into Grand Theft Auto 5. Alright, and let's run through Grand Theft Auto 5's benchmark as well. And I'm gonna be using pretty much the most maximum detail possible 4K resolution without anti-aliasing. And yeah, these are the settings that I'm gonna be using here today with advanced graphics as well as the most maximum as possible. So let's run through the benchmark and see how it fares. Alright, so 37 frames per second for the 5500XT, 41, 40, 30. Yeah, I mean, playable, right? It looked darn good at 4K max detail. But yeah, 30 frames, I guess it's to be expected, right? Definitely you can get a lot higher frame rate running at 1440p or 1080p in medium settings or something like that. But if you want to run this Grand Theft Auto 5 at 4K max detail, expect to get this. So yeah, I'd say like average is gonna be like something like 30 frames per second or something. Let's see. Let's wait for the longest pass. And yeah, then let's run through the same tests on the 5600XT as well. So 36, 40 frames per second. Alright. Let's see the blame test. So 30 frames per second, 29, 20, yeah. It's like playing on PlayStation 3, right? Or PlayStation 4. Most games are, you know, locked at 30 frames per second. Of course here you can get a little bit better. But yes, pretty much a console experience. It's kind of bad to play with a keyboard and mouse at 30 frames per second, but with a controller you actually don't really notice that much. Okay, 35 frames per second. Let's see what it does in the city as well when we're gonna be driving around with the car. And yeah, I'd say like 30 frames per second average, right? Should be. We're gonna head into the documents and check out what the actual average frame rate was for this benchmark. But with our own eyes we can see it's hovering like 35 to 40 frames per second, which is pretty decent, I guess, for a card that costs around 180 to 200 euros, right? But then again, the 1660 Ti Super should be even better, a little bit better, but cheaper, like 50 euros cheaper, right? Okay. Yeah, 37, I mean, totally playable, right? I guess take some graphical settings down to the medium settings, maybe some even to the lows, and you can definitely play at 4K with such a cheap video card. Although myself personally, I go with Nvidia's 1660 Ti Super, I guess. But if you have no choice, or for whatever reason this card is cheaper than the 1660 Ti Super, then yeah, why not get this, right? So documents, Rockstar Games, GTA 5, benchmarks, today's test. The average frame rate was 35.4 frames per second for the 5500XT, and as we can see now as well, the temperatures, maximum temperature for the video card went to 68 degrees Celsius with the ROG Strix cooling solution here, which is pretty okay, right? It's pretty okay, although the card's performance is nothing too spectacular, right? Then yeah, I mean, it could have been a little bit cooler, but then then again, you know, anything below 70 or 80 is definitely fine. Yeah, so this is how the RX5500XT performed, and yeah, let's check out how the 5600XT performed in Grand Theft Auto 5, and then check out what the temperatures did on that card as well. But yeah, that's it for the 5500XT. So 49 frames per second at the beginning here. A lot better result already. 52 for the 5600XT, dropping down to 43s. But we were averaging like 30 something, right, on the 5500XT. So definitely a much smoother experience already in Grand Theft Auto 5, which is pretty nice to see. Alright, so a lot bigger difference here in Grand Theft Auto 5 than any other benchmark that I've run here. Okay, let's wait for the long plane run and see how it fares there. Let's see, what does it do here? 52, hovering over 50, drops for a second below 50, but yeah, almost 60 frames per second here. Let's see, can it hold up while driving the car around in the city as well? So 40 frames per second, dropping to 35s even, 36. That's kind of similar what the 5500XT was, right? Huh. It's like 5 frames per second better, right? 5 to 10 maybe. 45 frames per second. That's playable with a mouse and keyboard. Like 45 plus is a pretty decent experience with a keyboard and mouse. It's not perfect, of course, right? But yeah, it's playable. Not like 30 frames per second. 42 frames per second here. 41. Oh, that's pretty fine. Take some settings to the mediums. Definitely get over 60 frames per second average in Grand Theft Auto 5 at 4K, which is pretty nice. But that is to be kinda expected, I guess, from a card that costs around 280 to 320 euros. 59, 54, almost 60 frames per second at 4K, and this is, yeah, everything is on the most maximum detail. So almost 60 frames per second. It's not bad, I guess, right? Definitely should hit 60 when taking some minor graphical options down to the mediums. Maybe hit 100 frames per second. No, I don't think you can when taking down to lowest detail. But yeah, this is how the 5600XT is performing here. Ending with a big bang. Stays around 50, right? Anyway, let's head into the documents and check what the actual result is in the Rockstar. Get our benchmarks, and as we can see, 47, exactly 47 frames per second average here. Let's see if I can minimize this and close it, and let me record you guys what's going on the desktop as well. So 47 frames per second, that's a pretty decent result in my opinion. That's a lot better than the 5500XT was, right? So definitely playable at 4K max detail. And as we can see in the temperatures, the maximum temperature was 65, so a little bit cooler than the 5500XT, right? Which was like 68, right? So 65 degrees Celsius. Of course, this one has one extra fan as well here, which should help, but not by a lot, not by a lot. Anyway, this is how the 5600XT performs in games and how the temperatures hold up on this exact TUF model here. So hopefully this was good information for you guys at 4K, how it fares, and the 5500XT. Anyway, thanks for watching. This is gonna conclude my benchmarking section. So, as you can see from the benchmarking results, I mean, both of these cards are pretty similar in speeds when testing them in 4K, right? Actually, like, sometimes I think 5500 XT outperformed the 5600 XT, which was quite odd. But anyway, I'm pretty sure you can actually game on both of these cards at 4K, just turn down some settings, and you'll be getting a reasonable FPS rate, which is pretty awesome, I guess. The only thing that actually bothered me is that both these cards are pretty mediocre versus Nvidia's counterparts. The 5500 XT is fighting blows with the 1660 Ti Super, which costs around 50 euros less, and the 5600 XT fights blows with the RTX 2060, and in 1080p or 1440p they're almost identical in speeds. But Nvidia is cheaper, and I guess we all know that Nvidia has by far much superior driver support and even software recording support, what I highly take into account when, you know, buying a video card. So when AMD and Nvidia is priced the same, I'll always go with the Nvidia. So in short, yeah, these cards are fine, but the price is a bit too much still to this day to make you wanna buy one over an offering from Nvidia. So if you do get one of these cards, be sure to get them cheaper than the 1660 Ti Super or RTX 2060. So overall, my final score for both of these cards is going to be a decent 7.5 out of 10. I mean, there's nothing really fundamentally wrong with the cards, but they're just, you know, a little bit overpriced, and Nvidia has a little bit better offering this time around here. Maybe not so in the next generation, but still, again, I do highly grade Nvidia's driver support and software support, right? Shadowplay versus Relive is just, for me, night and day difference, because I'm having huge codec issues and stuff like that with AMD's Relive recording, and it's just not as good as Shadowplay is. Although if you don't record yourself, right, then it's not a real issue, right? In terms of performance, they're the same, but again, you know, Nvidia is punching or crunching out drivers with each new game, right? So you can be sure that they run perfectly fast and don't have any crashes or something like that, right? Or absolutely bare minimum crashes, right? Anyway, yeah, that's gonna be it for my quick little review from these cards. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and yeah, not gonna expect too much for views for this old video, pretty much, from these old cards. But anyway, if you liked the video, if you had any, if you now understand what card to get, then yeah, leave a like, maybe sub, and I'll be seeing you soon, guys. Thanks for watching. Ciao for now.